Welcome back to Biz First in Focus. Doctor, the per capita income has brought about much controversies in political podiums these days. Many say that it was calculated based on 110 US dollars. Some say it was done according to the normal measurement. I want to know from you, Doctor, you're an academic. In your view, how do you view this situation that has cropped up?
Yes, you can get the per capita income in terms of US dollar as well as in terms of rupees. If you look at in terms of US dollar, the 2,836 was the amount mentioned, but in rupees, in rupees, according to statistical department, they say an average monthly income must be 36,451. If we assume that Sri Lanka's per capita income is same as what central bank suggested, like 2,836 US dollar, but you can use the annual average of exchange rate for that case, right? I don't care with 110 or 120, but you can get the year average value and then multiply by it. So in my calculation, I feel like if it is the case, compared to 2010, our per capita income, or your income and my income, increased by 15%. Basically, like 4,000 rupees you need to have extra in your purse now compared to the previous year. I don't know whether you feel it or not, but that's the calculation based on assuming that the CB report is correct. So if it is not, if you don't have the 15% growth in your income, that means still my argument is valid because you don't feel it. Maybe some people got it. So that's what I meant, like the trickle down in to the general public. This growth does not trickle down to the general public.
Let's talk about the depreciation of the rupee currently. Yesterday it stood at 133 against the US dollar. In your opinion, how do you view the depreciation of the rupee?
Yes, what exact figures this country wants? To US dollar, what is the rupee value we want? For yen, what would be the real value? I do aware that, you know, in terms of nominal exchange rate you are talking about, it matters to the people. For the importer or for the general public, the consumer, it matters. But my feeling is, do we have exact value that we are looking for, whether we have upper bound or lower bound for the exchange rate? That we don't have those modeling. So in that case, I'm not accepting, you know, Sri Lankan rupee must be 50 to $1, 60, 30, maybe 200. I don't know. We are not sure about what value we are looking for. But I do aware that these contributed to certain problems in the country. Why rupee suddenly fluctuated? That's the issue we should raise. So that might be due to the central bank bad policies. One is, like, you know, central bank kept this rupee with like we call it overvalue than the market value. So they kept it at a higher value. So then you lost the foreign reserves. You know, to get the get a certain value of exchange rate, you are using foreign reserves to defend it, right? So then we lost this foreign reserves. Foreign reserves end up to 5 billion US dollar by January 2012. So from the, you know, the so-called peak 8 billion, right? So before. So then another problem with the central bank, the same time they relaxed the import tariff. So then the imports, you know, flooded to the country. So my view is these two reasons contributed to have the balance of payment crisis in Sri Lanka. Although as academics and politicians and independent groups pointed out to the central bank and to the government this issue, they did not listen. So then it was, luckily IMF came to the picture and they pointed out, look, your exchange rate is a serious issue because you are losing around 500 million per month as from your foreign reserves to defend this. So in that case, government started to look at it. So that is how the depreciation took place. I don't know still which rate we are looking for. Economists call it equilibrium exchange rate. It doesn't mean that it must be determined by the market process. It should involve the interest rate, government policies, and the income gap of the country. A lot of things should be needed to model that. So if I hope that central bank has modeled it. If not, it is high time for us to go with the floating exchange rate, but a certain degree of fluctuation needed to be allowed. So I'm talking about a kind of a dirty float in that case.
Doctor, you are an optimist as far as the IMF is concerned. I read one of your articles recently and you have highlighted the fact it is a very good move to obtain loans from the IMF as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. I read this article on a Sinhalese newspaper and I was quite taken up. I want to ask you, Doctor, based on that particular article that you wrote to the newspapers, I want to ask you a question. I want to know, these are characteristics of the IMF of cutting down subsidies on fuel, making sure that the CPC and the CEB goes at a profit, at a break-even profit, and then floating the interest rates, floating the dollar rate as well. So all these are characteristics of the IMF. So how far is it good to obtain a loan from the IMF and putting the people to bear the brunt of the issues faced by the government?
Yeah, but why the IMF is the only source we can lend if we have a balance of payment crisis. So they are the responsible institution. So therefore government had no option. In one sense, you remember that how the central bank governor said that he is very happy that he is not going to obtain the loan, IMF loan, the previous 2 weeks time, before the other source, other government officers were in the favor of the decision. Central bank governor opposed it. But my concern is, if you have a real issue in the balance of payment and you are losing the foreign reserves, when the IMF gives you the loan, so your foreign reserves accelerate, it will certainly stabilize your currency at a certain level because your foreign reserves increase. The another sense is, oh look, this economy is supported by the IMF. That is a signal going to the international investors and international organizations and the credit rating agencies. They will quickly upgrade it, the Sri Lanka's sovereignty credit rating. So that gave kind of a confidence to the investors. So therefore, for two reasons, from that two reasons I accept IMF loan as a positive thing. One is the foreign reserves increase, and therefore there is no huge volatility in the exchange rate. So that is limited. The second reason is, so it is still less around 3.1% interest rate, better to get it, because otherwise you have to get at market rate. So, and also the investor confidence increase. So those are the reasons behind that I supported this move.
I want to know, Doctor, where is the central bank really going wrong?
Well, sometimes they take the decisions. I don't know whether it's the lag variable they have. They take the decision, correct decision, after damaging the economy. That's what my worry in fact, because they, as a central bank, they should have predicted, but luckily now they predict like we are going to have a serious economic crisis, we are going to have the balance of payment issues. Now they increase the interest rate. I'm happy about it. Now they increase the tax on imports. I'm also happy about it. Now they allow the currency to fluctuate. So those things would have been adopted by the mid 2010, in the mid 2010s, right? So, but my worry in fact is they adjust the policies after we lost the foreign reserves, after we faced the serious situation. So that's I think we are.
Doctor, my final question to you, Doctor, is during the war, the government said for the people to tie their belts, it's going to be a hard time. Subsequent to the war, things will be very rosy, the economic growth will achieve one fold to another. It was a good picture overall. However, now you just correctly mentioned we are moving towards an economic crisis in Sri Lanka. What is the message that the government can give the people at such a point? You say, doctor, that import taxes should be increased. At the end of the day, it's the people who are going to face the brunt of all this, doctor. So what is the message you have for the general public of this country?
What one should not even forget that this government is really based on the public choice theory. So theoretically speaking, this is the public opinion, and it is reflected by the government who were behind the war. It was the general public. So now, we came to a point that now public needs, more subsidies. But still, you spend lot of money on the war. Still, we did not start the repayment. So then there is that issue. Another issue is the entire world economy is in, downturn. EU region, US, and a lot of countries were having some issues. Sri Lanka as a small country can't escape from the world downturn. So we have our internal issues, we have the external pressures, and therefore I think we are facing a situation. Let's accept that we have some economic issues rather than saying that we have sound macroeconomic background. So if we have sound background, why do we lend from IMF? If we have a sound economic fundamentals, why do we want to increase the interest rate? We want to have more taxes. So that is my argument. Let's accept the fact that we have some economic issues. I know that ultimately this burden goes to the public, but don't forget that the government is running with the public choice theory.
Anyway, doctor, thank you very much for joining us right on this program.
Right
It's a pleasure having you this evening.